It's about 3 after 4. I think we're going to get started.
I'm good.
I'm good too, Sylvia. I'll just keep trying to I'm just trying to download WebEx on my MacBook, so I'll just keep working on that. Worst case scenario, I'll just go without video.
How do I just want to know how to share my screen is the only thing. Or Sue, did you practice that?
No.
Okay, so how do I share my screen?
So Isla, you're going to go to, at the bottom ribbon there, it says share.
Okay, it's grayed out. Do you need to change my setting? There we go.
That should work now.
Okay. Great. Okay, and then I can stop sharing. Okay, good. I'll stop sharing right now. Great, thank you.
No worries. Okay, I think we're ready to get started. So I would like to welcome members of the public, staff, other guests who are joining us today for our virtual PEDTalk event entitled Winter Cities. My name is Sylvia Sadowski and I work as a strategic and business planning advisor for the City of Hamilton, and I have the privilege to be your host today. Before we begin, I would like to start with the land acknowledgement statement. The City of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase in 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the City of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people across the Turtle Island, North America, and we recognize that we must do more to learn about the rich history of this land so that we can better understand our roles as residents, neighbors, partners, and caretakers. A few notes about today's session. This session will be recorded and cameras and mics have been turned off for audience members. At the end of the presentation, there will be a question and answer period. And for audience participants, you can email your questions throughout the session or immediately following the presentation to our email pedtalks@hamilton.ca, and we will do our best to answer your questions. So today I'd like to welcome Isla Tanaka and Sue Holdsworth, who will be discussing how the City of Edmonton has shifted its culture and is embracing the winter season. At the end of their presentation, we'll have our question and answer period, followed by a brief update from City of Hamilton staff, who will provide some information about winter activities happening in the Hamilton area. So without further ado, let's get started. It's my pleasure to welcome Jason Thorne, General Manager of the Planning and Economic Development Department, to introduce our speakers, Isla and Susan. Over to you, Jason.
Thanks, Sylvia, and hello everybody, and thanks for joining us for our, I guess this is our second PED Talk of the year, and also our second one that we've done virtually. The last one we had John Summers from our Tourism and Culture Division talking about the changing role of heritage museums in cities, and I was sort of scrolling through the list of participants, and I see some new names that I don't recognize, and a lot of PED staff. So welcome to you all, and people who I think have been to a number of PED Talks in the past. So for those of you who haven't, we've been doing these for 5 or 6 years, I think. We do 2 or 3 talks a year, all tied around topics and themes associated with the work that Planning and Economic Development does in Hamilton around generally around city building. So we've covered issues from making Hamilton a music city to making Hamilton an attractive city for immigrants and new Canadians. We've talked about the role of public art in city building. And today's topic, I think, will be an interesting one and definitely a very timely one. We're very fortunate to have a couple of speakers here from the City of Edmonton who has very much been a leader and I would say a groundbreaker in terms of planning for winter cities. And I got to know a little bit of their winter city work when I was working out in Edmonton a few years back. That's actually where I first met Sue when I was working as a consultant in Edmonton a few years ago. And probably more so than any city I know, they have really embraced winter as being not sort of a season to be avoided and regretted, but something to be embraced. And so I thought that would be a very timely topic to have right now, especially given how important sort of outdoor activity and being able to get outdoors and enjoy the city outdoors is going to be this winter in particular. So, I'm going to introduce our two speakers. Isla Tanaka is the Winter City Planner for the City of Edmonton. She has a master's degree in natural resource and environmental studies, where she explored outdoor recreation spaces in winter cities. And she has presented on winter life and design of winter cities at conferences in North America, Asia, Europe. She's helped plan international winter cities conferences. She sits on the international board of the Winter Cycling Federation. And she's also a winter lover and has raised 2 children in Northern Canadian communities. She cycles year round and she loves cross-country skiing. So it sounds like the City of Edmonton has found a very capable person to take over from Sue Holdsworth, who is our other speaker today. And she was actually the lead during the development of Edmonton's Winter City strategy and led its implementation for about 7 years. She is an urban planner by background. She's very passionate about the intersection of design, placemaking, and urban wellness. She's been active in both current planning as well as long-range planning, has worked in 3 countries for NGOs, for local governments. She was also a project manager for another very interesting Edmonton program called the Planning Academy, which is a public education initiative out of the city's planning department. And she's now the project manager for Recover, which is an urban wellness initiative. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Isla and Sue to talk a little bit about some of the work that Edmonton has done.
Great. Can you just start sharing your screen?
Yep. Right. There we go.
Great. Just by saying thank you for inviting us to share today. We're both really happy to be here. Before I start, I should just let you know that I am no longer involved in a work capacity role as a staff person, and it is in her very capable hands. I'm involved now as a volunteer on the Winter City Advisory Council and through the podcast, which hopefully won't be paused for much longer. Isla, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Sue actually hired me about 7.5 years ago to start working on the implementation plan of the Winter City strategy. So we were working on this together for quite a long time, and so it's been an interesting transition just doing this by myself for the last year. Yeah, it's been a great journey, and I hope we have some great ideas for you. And yeah, let's go. Take it away, Sue.
Isla, it's hard to hear you.
Okay, is that better?
And there's a lot of kind of noise coming through. Interference.
Okay, is that better?
Say something?
Yeah, is it better if I hold my mic up?
I think so, yes.
Okay, I'll hold it
Getting
up.
a thumbs up from Sylvia. Yep.
Okay, good.
All right. So anyways, we're going to tell you a bit about our 10-year Winter City strategy and some of what we've learned. Hopefully it'll give you some ideas for yourselves, especially this winter with COVID having such a huge impact and it being that much more important to get outside. Anyways, a few years ago, headlines like this one in the next slide were very common. And, you know, one of our national Maclean's even talked about us being a nation of winter wusses, you know, and this is where we started with the Winter City strategy, people being afraid of going outside and just only thinking about how cold and miserable it was. That's kind of the context where we started. And so Edmontonians, they were hibernating and staying inside. They were disconnected from the outside on a downward spiral. And, you know, businesses and even the public sector, we were having trouble recruiting people to come here in the winter months. It was easy in summer, but it was a tough sell in winter. And a lot of people were afraid of our winters. Isla, can you switch to the next slide, please? And, you know, we know that winter comes with more challenges, that dealing with cold ice and snow and longer hours of darkness, that's all challenging. And hate it if you want it, that's fine. But if you live in a place where it happens anyways, you may as well make the most of it. But you know what? We weren't always afraid of winter. and we weren't always hibernating. If you go back, to early days, in 1913, we were skating on local lakes. We had our first winter carnival in Edmonton in 1923. Residents were learning to ski at Highland Ski Hill here in town in 1948. And there was this big ski jump that went over Connors Hill Road in 1950. And if you're wondering how old women's hockey is in Edmonton, the middle photo is from 1910. But at some point, we stopped, embracing winter. We closed the parks in winter, stayed inside, thought of it as the time to save money. Cost savings time is the off season. So now we've been reversing that. And so we knew we were already really good at winter festivals. Edmonton for many years has had a full suite of winter festivals, something to do every weekend in winter. But we knew we needed to focus on improving everyday life, changing those day-to-day experiences. And we got going in the fall of 2011. And in the winter of 2012, I took this systems thinking course and learned all about the iceberg model and the systems thinking model here and applied it to the whole strategy. So we knew it wasn't just about events or festivals at the top, that it's also about the patterns of behavior that occur over time and our system, our bylaws, our policies and budgets, our maintenance and operations, and our design and infrastructure. So we knew we wanted to go deeper, even below that, to the underlying stories of the stories we tell ourselves and others of what it's like to live in Edmonton in winter. And so, to change those stories of it being the off season and time to hibernate. We knew we were talking about a culture shift, and we knew that our work had to have integrity in terms of linking everything together and pulling in the same direction. We dove into tons of community engagement and consultation, multifaceted. We had leadership sessions, dialogue workshops, all kinds of things. We reached out to post-secondaries, to the tourism industry, to meteorologists, the people who report the weather, to Aboriginals, Indigenous serving agencies, newcomer serving agencies, urban designers, even fashion designers, like you name it. We did all kinds of things, and all that, everything we heard from all those groups informed. We formed a Winter City think tank, and we gave them everything we heard, and that formed, all that input helped to develop the goals that became the Winter City strategy. And right from the beginning, though, we talked about love. We were inspired by Peter Kagayama, from the author of For the Love of Cities, and we asked everybody what would make them fall in love with winter in Edmonton. So we got people to focus on assets, what we have going for our winters already, and how to amplify them. And we didn't realize it, but at the time, just having that conversation and framing it in that way, that was the beginning of our culture shift. It was really powerful to get people to focus on the positive. And it was almost like magic that the culture shift started before even the strategy was formally adopted. Anyways, these were our some of the recurring themes and the guiding principles we used. We knew it had to be driven by the people, so based on what we heard from everybody. And the guiding principles, authentic was really important to us. We looked at tons of what other people were doing in other cities. We didn't need to reinvent all the wheels, but we knew whatever we chose for ourselves had to be work for us in our context, and based on our winter, because our winter, frankly, is really different from Hamilton's winter. It's a different kind of a winter, different context. And sustainable, we also meant that in the way that it needed to endure. So we needed people to see themselves in it. And Councillor Henderson, he encouraged us every time, who was our champion on City Council, don't get bogged down by the way things are now, by the current regulations or processes or policies, any of that stuff. He really prodded us to always dream big, not be limited by our current context. So this next slide shows our vision document, the strategy called For the Love of Winter. It's our 10-year Winter City strategy. It was adopted in the fall of 2012. Interestingly enough, we celebrated the release of this document. We printed tons of copies before it went to City Council for their formal adoption, which I've never done before in current planning. It has these 4 pillars. Winter life, winter design, winter economy, and winter story. Isla, on the next slide. Isla, if you can advance the slide.
Yep, this one?
Yes, so those are the 4 pillars, and I'll tell you more about them in a bit. Next slide. We got going on an implementation plan, and that's when Isla first joined the team. So in 2013, she started on a temporary contract, and she's had a few of those. And we had a working group for each of the pillars that reviewed all the ideas that were in the strategy and tested their feasibility, but looked at budgets, identified partners, and all that. So it's our 10-year roadmap, and it was adopted in the fall of 2013. And next slide. So it has 64 actions, and we had some budget dedicated to the work right from the get-go, some ongoing and some one-time. Right when the strategy was approved, we were given, to start with, $250,000 ongoing. And that was mainly to support stuff at the community level, community initiatives. And over the years, we've received like $150,000 of one-time funding for a pilot project for lighting heritage buildings, or one-time funds to buy cross-country ski equipment, or to host the 2 international Winter Cities Shake-Up conferences that we hosted. And then also in 2016, Council approved an FTE so Isla could become permanent, thank heaven, because it was ridiculous having to rehire her all the time. But we weren't doing it alone. All these actions, we set up working groups for each of the pillars, made up of community leaders, city staff, and also 2 city councillors joined us. And besides that, we had a ton of community partners, and we still do. They've evolved over the years. And one of the favorite things I've heard about our strategy is that it has created social license for people to get out of the box and try new things. So to explain a bit about the pillars, winter life, that's the one that focuses mostly on people, on providing opportunities for outdoor activities and active transportation. And some of the things we've completed under this pillar are working with co-workers to improve winter recreation in our city parks. The team lead for the River Valley programs jokingly blamed us for taking away her downtime, her winter downtime, for making her work hard year round. And we've created 2 skating trails in our River Valley and increased snow clearing in the parks, so residents can access the spaces, including picnic tables. And we partnered with another child-friendly city project to create a winter play street for children in the downtown. And we provided grants to local ski hills and community groups to provide winter recreation experiences for low-income and newcomer families. And we've also sponsored a whole bunch of really cool things, like fat bike chariot races, or a winter design exhibition, electronic dance party, or parka patio parties at one of our local art galleries. And for winter design, the key foundational action was to put together our winter design guidelines. And, because our cities in Canada, we kind of import Southern thinking when we're designing. And so we've really been trying to change that. And we worked with local planners, designers, architects, landscape architects, builders, everybody, and city staff to develop these. And we're pretty proud of them. They have 2 main goals, one focusing on streetscapes and one on open space. But it's really about making our spaces more comfortable, and so really paying attention to microclimate, accessibility, and safety, and then also just more interesting and fun and beautiful. We're also working on guidelines for lighting in our city. And it's not just about more lights and recreating daylight. It's being very strategic, highlighting architectural features, used for placemaking, and really having an impact on sense of identity. And it even used, creatively on one of our skating trails, like in this photo. And we're working also to change the way we design to reduce wind at the ground level. We know we have to be more dense, and their towers are reality, but they do create worse microclimates at the street level for pedestrians. more wind, and it's our responsibility to mitigate that. So we're working to understand how to mitigate those downdraft effects, and most importantly, I think, how to change our processes, our review process, at the whole land development application process to have better outcomes at the street level. In terms of the winter economy pillar, 3 goals: to support our local festivals, develop a 4 seasons patio culture, and to support winter business and business in wintertime. And so we're supporting our local festivals by managing a shared inventory that they all access for things like fire pits and heaters and lighting equipment. And we also help with shared marketing and promotions. And we have worked with tourism here, Edmonton Tourism, now known as Explore Edmonton. And they've jumped on board like all in and made, have award-winning marketing campaigns. Is winter cold? Yes. Dark? Yes, yes. But boring? Never. And so we are seeing more people coming to Edmonton. Not right now, though. Hopefully we will again. And we keep hearing from residents that they'd like a European-style winter market. So we've supported several attempts at that, experimented with building some huts, and worked with industrial design students at the U of A. But we're still working on a way to hold more kind of longer markets with cute huts where the vendors can stay warm. And we've also seen a change in cycling. A good news story is that it's growing here in Edmonton, year-round cycling. And, bike store staff, that used to be laid off in winter now are working year-round, and they're as busy on a Saturday in January as they are in July. And it's good for our local economy too, because as we know, cyclists and pedestrians stop more often at small local businesses and coffee shops more than vehicle drivers do. And last pillar, our winter story. It's focused mostly on the culture shift. We are embracing and celebrating our winter season more. And we, little things that are part of that are we've created a program to encourage residents to decorate their front yards in winter. You've probably heard of Front Yards in Bloom, a winter version called Winterscapes. And we've jumped into social media promoting events and festivals and activities, all kinds of information. Our website has tons of resources there that you can check out. We use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm not sure if they're all back up full force. They were paused for a while. But you can, if you go to the website, you can learn how to be active inside winter, how to organize a winter party, learn about groups you could join. Anyways, all kinds of things. How to dress, really big one. And we also have a blog that we share local winter stories on, like the one example on the slide. And finally, Isla and I, we started a podcast called Snow and Tell. And so we've only managed to release 3 episodes so far, but we have several in the hopper that we're really excited about. So anyways, check them out, the 3 that are out. One has to do with wind, which is super cool, and lighting, and one on winter romance. And yeah, so stay tuned for more of those. And when we started the strategy, people started calling Isla and myself to ask us what's going on and where they can access stuff. So Isla created the Winter Excitement Guide, and there have been many editions, and we've published tens of thousands of copies and given them out, and we always run out every year. Super popular, this time only online. And, there's real momentum in our city, for sure. And individuals, community groups, corporations, they're all getting on board. This is the social license piece. So, like Epcor, for one winter, they sponsored a winter chalet. A group of community folks, they set up this ski rack at an LRT station because they want to ski to LRT, and all kinds of things. Big, giant yegg snow fight organized by two citizens. Last slide before I hand it over to Isla. Hopefully I haven't taken too long. But there's so many lessons we've learned over the years. Just to highlight a few, work with what you've got, build on your own assets and amplify them. And don't just focus on events. They're great, but the everyday experience, that's what really matters. And focus on possibilities, not obstacles. And I I suspect that Hamilton's already really good at this already. And as Jan Gehl reminds us, don't forget that culture changes over time. Just because something isn't the way things are done now doesn't mean that it can't change. With that, I hand it over to Isla.
Great, thank you, Sue. Is my mic okay now? Or is it still a bit fuzzy?
Isla, if you don't mind keeping it close to maybe where you're speaking, that would be the
Sure.
best. Thank
Okay,
you.
is that better?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
much better.
I had a mishap right before this and I spilt my tea all over my desk and I think it might have got a bit wet. I think that might be the problem. So, okay, thank you, Sue. Okay, so what does all of this mean for a COVID winter? So I have some suggestions for you. So what's already happening in your city? Have a look around. Are there events that you can capitalize on, that you can support? If people are already building snowmen, then why not start something like we did, like the Winterscapes program? And here are just a few examples of what we had. So people are using snow, they're using lights for nighttime as well, they're using ice, and this one is ice and lights, and sometimes they're just using snow equipment. So it changes the way people feel about the community and about their neighborhood when their yards are decorated. And so we run this program actually in January, February. When Sue talks about changing the everyday life, it's not, we tend to do November, December really well with Christmas lights. So we talk about them being winter lights and we encourage people to keep them on right through March. And so these yard decorations are in January and February when we need more of that type of thing. So also, I encourage you to look at what barriers exist to creating a vibrant outdoor life in your city. So do you have policies and regulations or procedures that were created with a summer biased mindset? So for example, our patio permits used to only be for summertime. The patios had to be done by October. Now our patio permits run year round. So we have a growing winter patio season. Our patio heaters allowed on your sidewalks, on sidewalk patios. In some cities, they're not. Is that a barrier for you? And are fire pits allowed in public spaces? And we hosted, this is a picture from a winter market that we hosted, and we found that our regulations and policies on risk management weren't conducive to having a European style market. We couldn't sell mulled wine and let people wander through the market. So things like that take change and they take building relationships, but COVID is providing us with a really interesting opportunity to start pushing some of those boundaries a little faster. So like I said, have a look at what's getting in your way for creating that vibrant outdoor winter life. Streets are, in general, in most cities, they are our largest public asset. So how can they be used in the wintertime? We saw all over the world in the summer, streets being shut to cars and open to people. But just because it's winter doesn't mean we have to close them down. There might be some more challenges with snow clearing. You might have to have warming spaces for people to warm up in. But streets can become very public people places instead of just car places. These are a couple of pictures from the play street that we had that Sue mentioned was child friendly, and we ran it into nighttime. So don't just think about the daytime and daytime activities. Edmonton is further north than Hamilton, so we get dark around 3:30, 4 o'clock. So think about the nighttime as well. Put out fire pits, play with light. Also think about temporary events. You don't have to set things up that are going to last for the rest of the winter. Try something out, run it for a couple of weeks, and then try something else. Also promote what's happening. When we first started the strategy, the City of Oslo told us that they need to remind people every year that winter can be fun. And so that's part of the reason that we've done as much promotion as we've done. So let people know what's happening, have a hub of information so people can find out where they can go skating, where they can try snowshoeing, and use really bright, vibrant, fun photos as well. And I also encourage you to use a GBA Plus lens. Most of you have probably heard about Gender-Based Analysis Plus. It's just basically looking at your city through different lenses. So age, for example, do children have places to play in the wintertime? And what about seniors? Many, many seniors are very healthy and very active. But as soon as they run into a pathway like the one on the right that is uncleared, that will be a barrier for them because they're afraid of slipping and falling. So think about age when you think about how your maintenance procedures are designed. Are you clearing the parks, the paths in the parks? That's a really cheap, easy way to get people outside this winter. You know, longer term, maybe designing park spaces differently for all ages, but certainly right now, just clear pathways so people can gain some access. Most Canadian cities are very diverse. People who come from backgrounds from colder countries are much more willing to get outside. They're not afraid of the cold, whereas we find immigrants who are coming from warmer countries are often much more reluctant to get outside in the wintertime. So when you think about designing programs for people, even if it's for newcomers to try something like cross-country skiing, you have to look at it through an ethnic lens and their lens. Agencies here that have given free cross-country ski and free snowshoeing lessons to new Edmontonians have found it's not just about providing a free lesson and equipment. It's also about providing mittens and snow pants sometimes. And it's also about teaching them how to dress. So think about your target audience. Who do you want to be there and what might their needs be to take part in that event in winter? Income level also affects a number of choices. Transportation, for example, people from lower incomes tend to take public transit more, so they are exposed to the elements more year-round. Let's face it, rain, hot sun, and snow. So do they have a place to get out of the wind in the wintertime? It will also affect their ability to stay outside. Not everyone can afford a really good winter jacket. So some people might be wearing second jackets or a bargain jacket that's not terribly warm. So when thinking about designing spaces or creating events for people, if you are trying to encourage a really diverse group of people to come, you may need more warming stations so people can go in and warm up and then go back outside if their winter gear is not very warm. And then ability and disability affect our mobility in the winter. And let's face it, we are all temporarily abled, and that can change at any moment. That's actually me on the right. I had a stress fracture in my right foot a couple of winters ago, and it completely changed my experience of winter. And that's actually a coworker of ours who suddenly found herself having to use a wheelchair. And she some days could not get to work. She could get to the bus stop, but then the bus stop itself was not cleared well enough. So it's not just about accessibility, but it's also about dignity and how people are able to move around in their city and how they see themselves. So for example, the sidewalks in these two pictures, the fellow on the right, he can access that sidewalk that's on the right, but the one on the left is an immediate barrier. He might only need to go another half a block, but he can't get where he's going. So I don't have easy answers for you as far as maintenance goes with snow clearing because it's still a challenge for us. But it's definitely a lens that we need to consider when we're designing and when we're planning our maintenance procedures. So what's happening in other cities this winter as well? In Calgary, they had a few fire pits in their parks, but residents had to have fire permits to use them. So what they've done this winter is they've waived the fire permits, and they've put a lot more fire pits into their park system. Some of them are bookable. They've also provided free firewood. So they've run into some challenges where people have turned up and the firewood has been gone. So people have taken it home with them. But they've looked at their permit system and they've decided it's got in the way of people getting outside this winter. So that's a really good example of one city just changing, or at least temporarily changing their permitting system. In Edmonton, we're very different. We have lots and lots of fire pits and barbecue pits in our park system, and our residents can use them year-round without any fire pits. So this isn't a challenge we've run into, but it's nice to see that Calgary is looking at how they can change. In Eau Claire, Wisconsin, this is actually a city that was part of a winter mission project run by 880 cities out of Toronto. It was one of 3 cities. what they did was they had a look at what assets they already had, and they decided that their library system was a phenomenal way to share winter gear. So they chose 2 libraries and they made up winter gear kits. And so people can go to the library, and with their library cards, they can rent snowshoes, toboggans, hockey gear, you know, and a couple of other things. So they had a look at what already existed, and they adapted, and it was really, really successful last year, and they're running it again this year. In Toronto, and you might have heard a bit about what Toronto's doing, they are now clearing and maintaining a lot more of their trails this winter so people can get out. They're opening more washrooms, and they've also got a public campaign going to let people know what's available and where they can go. And we also heard, Sue and I just heard earlier today that that City Council has also just passed a recommendation to create a Winter City strategy. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of Toronto. Snow piles are a really cheap, easy way to give kids somewhere to play in the wintertime. If you're able to, if the snow is clean, why not just pile it up and let kids go? They'll play on that thing for hours. And in this case, they actually dug a little tunnel to get through and then make a slide. We built a snow slide actually for that festival or the market I talked about earlier. We didn't have enough snow in our downtown, so we worked with one of our ski hills and actually took a snow gun downtown and made snow and built this snow slide. And it was really popular. There's also I think it's New Bedford in the US has taken this idea and is using it to create some winter activities for their city this winter. And Bench Consulting this summer and fall had a competition for winter placemaking ideas. They've just released this. It has some excellent ideas in there. Sue talked earlier about context. So when you have a look at this, think about what are your winters like in Hamilton and what will work and what won't work for your context. But there are some great ideas and great places to start. And I'll finish with winter patios. They've been a really hot topic, and I've had a lot of inquiries about them. So this summer, like the streets, patios were popular around the world. But just because it's winter doesn't mean we need to close them and put the chairs and the tables away. This is a picture of our largest and our oldest winter patio in Edmonton. It's on private space, so it's actually quite large, and they've done some really interesting and fun infrastructure in that space, and it's very popular, and it's created a real community hub. But winter patios don't have to be this elaborate. They can be this simple. Put out some picnic benches, put out some tables and chairs. And I'll finish with this story. This is actually a venue that's in our downtown. They're part of a pilot project to extend the sidewalk into the parking space. So it's a boardwalk that's put into the parking space, and that's used by pedestrians, and then the patio itself is extended out onto the sidewalk further. And so we're running a pilot project to see how snow clearing works with these sidewalk installations. But anyway, we had a polar vortex that sat over the prairies for about 2.5 weeks last winter, and we had extreme cold during that time. And one of the regulars, mostly as a joke, tweeted to the venue that it was a balmy -32 and they should open the patio. So they said, if you come, we'll open it. And they did. They had about 30 people, I think, in total who arrived over the course of the evening. These people now have a really fun story to tell. They have bragging rights for being outside on a winter patio at that temperature. And I wasn't able to make it, but I hear that the beer was slushy in the glasses by the end of the evening. So, you know, what we talk about is providing an invitation and opportunities for people to try something new. So I hope we've given you some ideas that you can use in Hamilton this winter. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue and Isla. So now this brings us into our question and answer period. And just before we go into it, I'd like to remind the audience that you can send your questions in through our email, pedtalks@hamilton.ca, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. So we do have a few that have come in so far. So let's begin with the first question. So the first question can either be answered by Isla or Sue. I know both of you guys talked about it a little bit in your presentation. So the question is, can you elaborate on the play street concept? What activities were there? And was the street closed all winter?
Sure, I can start with that one. No, it was just one evening. That's all we did for that play street. It was one evening. It was actually the same evening as an Oilers game, and the arena was very close by. So we had a lot of families come through. We had fire pits. We had tables and chairs with kids' crafts and books. We had great big Lego type, like big Duplo type blocks that the kids could play with. We had light sticks for when it got dark. We had kick sleds on wheels. So a kick sled is something that's very popular in Scandinavia, just for getting around. So we put some temporary wheels on, and they were able to push each other around on those. And that's all I can remember. Yeah, it was only the one evening, but we do have a Play Streets program in the city, and communities can book them, and they have road barriers, they have pylons, and lots of ideas for setting up like a play street in a residential community.
And we did support one in a residential neighborhood as well, and it was after school till supper time, I guess, or whatever. And it was just street hockey. We had tons and tons of busload of kids come and play street hockey in the street on a whole block. It was fun.
Thank you for that. And the next question is with regards to insurance. Did you have a need for insurance for your strategy? And do you have any issues or challenges in identifying what insurance you need and in getting what type of insurance?
Well, we didn't have general insurance for developing the Winter City strategy. But we did learn, just even in doing the consultation before the strategy was adopted, that insurance and risk are really big factors. And one of the big things we heard is that the city is much too risk averse. So people thought, well, let's blame the lawyers, is kind of where everybody's heads kind of went. But what we found out is it wasn't the lawyers' fault. Community groups would propose winter events or winter activities, wanted to do certain things, and it would go through the approval process, and lawyers would say, you could do that, but you have to mitigate these concerns by doing X, Y, Z. And then that would get translated through the bureaucracy. And by the time it got back to the community group, the answer was, no, you can't do it. But the lawyers never said that. It was just something in the culture and in the telephone kind of game as it traveled across. So we said instead, we need to build a culture of shared responsibility. And that's what we needed to support. And of course, some events need to get insurance, like that hasn't changed summer, winter, that's true year round. We don't get overly involved. One of the keys, I think, in shifting our culture, helping to get around some of these issues, though, is that on our Winter City Advisory Council was the lead city solicitor. And so he, when we had somebody propose that they wanted to do flying canoe races, like basically put canoes down a ski hill and shoot them down, that was going to be our local response to Red Bull crashed ice. Before he got too far with his idea, I connected Daniel, the guy with the brilliant ideas, with the lead solicitor. We sat down and had a meeting, and he said early on, you can do that, you just have to do these things. We eliminated all the middle people so that when it came time for him to actually fill out all the civic events forms and that, he'd already addressed all the concerns. So anyways, it's an ongoing issue. We're still trying to capture shared responsibility.
Great, thank you. It's not easy. Our next question is, since COVID, what major changes to the strategy have you had to make?
Well, that's an interesting question because Winter City is actually a council initiative. We have, I think, Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have about 24 of them in the city, which means that we have a political champion. There's a councillor who sits on the advisory council. When COVID hit in the spring, they were all paused. So we can't, at this point, we can't move forward with new things, but I can work on things that are already going, that are kind of rolling. So that's been one change, is that we haven't been able to move forward right now on some new things, like the lighting strategy, for example, and the podcast and the social media were all paused just to make sure that there was that official city wording on COVID. But otherwise, you know, I get lots of questions from city staff and from other cities on just ideas to help get people outside. So really for the strategy, the biggest thing is that the new work is paused at the moment.
Thank you for that. So we have time for maybe one or two more questions before we move on to an update from our city staff. So another question that's come in is, the question is, I wanted to ask, what is the time frame that you really started to see changes in Edmonton?
Sue, go for that.
Oh, okay. I think it started really quickly. I think it's because we had such robust consultation and engagement early on. I think the changes started happening faster than we anticipated. And I don't know, some of it I think is just lucky timing as well. Some of the actions we really struggled with and it felt like we were banging our heads against the walls on some of them. And then suddenly it's like the floodwaters opened. And like with bike lanes downtown, you know, we were struggling to clear snow better off of bike lanes in our city. And then suddenly we have this network of separated bike lanes that has the gold standard, you know, on all of them, which was beyond our wildest dreams when we, you know, were doing the implementation plan. So I don't know. I don't know if I answered the question, but it surprised us how quickly some things have gone, especially the things to do with culture and changing the conversations. And other things are still remain to be tough slogs. We know we've made a big difference already, but we know we're not nearly done. I say it's really Isla now. Well, and the rest of the corporation. She's not doing it on her own.
Yeah. No, it's not just me. No. Yeah. And it's been interesting how many city staff have picked up on it, you know, and reach out and say, how can I put a winter lens on this new program? So that's good to hear.
Great. That's great to hear. So that brings us to the end of the question and answer period. We do have a couple other questions that were sent in. Maybe we can forward them to Isla and Sue, and we can get responses to them offline after the meeting. So to move on, thank you very much for your questions and your answers. Next, I'd like to welcome some of our colleagues from the City of Hamilton to provide an update on what's happening in Hamilton this winter. So I'd like to welcome Laura Kern, Program Development from Healthy and Safe Communities, who will provide an update on recreation initiatives over winter in Hamilton, and we'll be highlighting some of the new services and programming that have been developed due to COVID-19. Also, I'd like to welcome Dana Borsia and Pamela Holland from the Tourism and Culture Division in PED, who will provide some updates on some of Hamilton's outdoor offerings coming up this winter season. So I'd like to welcome now, turn it over to Laura. Whenever you're ready, Laura, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Sylvia. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. My name's Laura Kern. I'm the Manager of Program Development within the Recreation Division, and happy to provide an update today on how services are changing and the winter embrace that's starting. So typically recreation programming retreats indoors for the winter, much like Edmonton experienced, with the exception of outdoor rinks. Hockey will always be hockey. And when we operate 30 plus indoor facilities across the city, we're happy to provide, you know, those indoor opportunities for people through the winter. And it is cultural. I mean, people race inside, day camps stay inside. There's less enrollment in programs through the winter months. But there really is a shift happening. There is a renewed value on outdoor public spaces. We right now are only operating our indoor facilities for skating and for our pools. And so how can we bring recreation and programs outdoors, and how can we rethink the outdoors as safe and usable recreation spaces? So when asked through EOC if it's possible for us to shift resources and programs outdoors, we jumped at the opportunity to look at this and to develop and create new experiences for residents. We have a program development team. We look towards best practices. Edmonton led the way and was really the basis on a lot of the initiatives that we looked at what was possible. So over the past 3 weeks, we've been finalizing these plans for what enhanced outdoor recreation can look like in Hamilton. As in previous winters, staff will operate 4 outdoor rinks and will support 20 plus additional community rinks that are volunteer operated. It'll look a little different. There's a lot more signage at our outdoor rinks. There'll be a new reservation system for the city operated rinks to assist with crowd control and gatherings. However, unlike previous winters, we're also going to be doing some really new and exciting things. Both golf courses are remaining open dawn to dusk for residents to access the fields for winter hiking and exercise. The golf staff at King's Forest has been phenomenal. They've marked out and will be maintaining a 2.7 kilometer trail for people to snowshoe, ski, hike. There's winter golf tee times when the weather permits. And in the new year, we're also going to be planning on offering disc golf courses in the winter, snowshoe, Nordic pole lending, wheelchair ski lending free of charge to residents, as well as a place for scheduled meetups and walks outside. At our recreation centers, staff are working on plans to bring programming outdoors. There'll be an events calendar early in the new year. It'll run from January 11th to February 15th, coinciding with the last 2 weeks with Winterfest. Programs include at many of our rec centers across the city, family fun hours, where you can book a space and come by and participate in winter outdoor stations led by our staff. After school activities, especially for our centers that are a walking route for families walking home from school. So obstacle courses off the sidewalk, challenges, activities, things for kids to take home, or an activity to work on for the night. There'll be guided instructional walks, bird watching, and really opportunities for engagement with residents, contests, the ability to submit and share photos through social media. So we're working on all those plans right now. And lastly, we're also embracing that virtual and remote gatherings are going to be here for a while. We will be launching new virtual programs, especially targeting populations who are unable to get outside or who are at risk for isolation through the winter months. We'll also have virtual options for children, such as home alone and babysitting certifications. So there's alternative childcare options for parents. So lots of exciting things happening in recreation. We're really excited to jump at the opportunity to develop and to follow in the footsteps of some leaders such as Edmonton, and even more excited about the support of EOC and Council through this. Oh, you're muted still, Sylvia.
Sorry, I'll try again. Thank you, Laura, for that update. And I'm going to pass it over to Dana and then Pam.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. So our job at Tourism Hamilton, my name is Dana again, and I work at Tourism Hamilton on the marketing team. So our job is to help identify and promote what is truly unique about the city. And while we've been making headlines for years for amazing culinary and cultural scene for all the right reasons, it's arguably our very rare, our very special outdoor offerings that makes Hamilton really unique as a destination in the region. So I'm going to provide a very quick, very high-level recap of some of these world-class natural assets that we have right here in our backyards for locals to enjoy safely this winter. It'll probably be a refresher for a lot of the locals, but it's amazing to package and hear it all, and to know that much, if not all of the things I'm going to talk about are within a 20-minute drive to our downtown core or one of our other historic downtowns like Ancaster, Waterdown, Dundas. That in and of itself makes the city unique, is that proximity to nature that we hear about all the time. And as much as possible, I'm going to focus on only in Hamilton experiences to remind us all what we have in our own backyards, how special it really is. So I'm going to start with hiking. Of course, many cities and destinations have hiking. What most don't have is the Niagara Escarpment cutting through the city. It's been designated a UNESCO World Biosphere Reserve, and it's gifted us with just this incredible topography that is so unique and endless trails. We've got a great roundup on our website at tourismhamilton.com. But some of my personal favorites in the winter in particular are Dundas Valley Conservation Area. It's stunning year round, but there's something about its sort of vastness and quiet and calm in the winter that is so special. We've got the Shadok Trail that is really, really accessible to, say, downtown workers, takes you from the West End right up through to Ancaster with amazing views of the city. Christie Lake maintains around 10 kilometers of trails. And if you want to try snowshoeing this year, you can rent snowshoes at Adventure Attic in Dundas. I just called and checked, they're still renting them. The next one that is a unique to Hamilton experience, it's obviously not the only place in the region that does this, but waterfront skating. The city's blessed with tons of outdoor skating rinks, but there's something really special about the Pier 81 because of its sort of panoramic views of the harbor front and the lakefront. They're reopening this Saturday with skate rentals and some new safety measures in place as well. We've got the Royal Botanical Gardens, which we all know about. For those that don't know, it is Canada's largest botanical gardens, in large part thanks to 2,400 acres of conservation land and 27 kilometers of hiking trails. They have a very popular night Christmas program, but unfortunately, it is so Instagrammable, it is sold out, but they still have some great daytime programming with seasonal displays and hikes. So again, a reminder that we have Canada's largest botanical gardens. Many people think it's Bouchard Gardens in Victoria. It is in fact RBG, and it's right here in our backyards. Next, of course, we have waterfalls. I won't spend too long on that. Just a reminder that they are just as beautiful, if not more beautiful and unique in the winter. One very unique to Hamilton experience is ice climbing at Tiffany Falls in Ancaster. When, or these days, if Tiffany Falls freezes over, there's a company called One Axe Pursuits that actually leads ice climbing up the waterfalls. It's very Game of Thrones-esque. It's amazing, even if you're just there to watch. For those looking for a more urban outdoor experience, Tourism Hamilton has collected and published a bunch of self-guided walking tours, all very COVID-friendly. You can do them alone or with your household bubble. We've got a neighborhood by neighborhood mural walk. We've got architecture tours, and we're doing more and more fun film maps. For recent examples, Umbrella Academy, where we mapped all the locations that people can actually visit that are publicly accessible. And we have a bunch more on the website as well. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that. There's lots more on our website. The City of Hamilton has also produced an amazing winter activities guide, hamilton.ca winter activities in Hamilton, and tourismhamilton.com. I'm going to hand it over now to Pamela Holland to walk us through my favorite winter event, Winterfest. Thank you.
And Sylvia, how are we for time?
We're running a little bit over time,
Okay.
but we can definitely listen to
Sure.
your piece about Winterfest.
So my name is Pamela Holland. I'm a senior project manager in the city's tourism and culture division, and I'm just going to give you a brief overview of Hamilton Winterfest. It's an annual multi-week winter celebration featuring free and very affordable cultural and recreation events and activities for participants of all ages. It's a co-production of between the City of Hamilton and Cobalt Connects, which is a Hamilton organization that connects creative communities through a variety of projects, as well as dozens of local nonprofit organizations and businesses. I just want to give a shout out to Jeremy Fragerberger. I know he's part of the audience today here. He's the cultural strategist of Cobalt Connects for his outstanding work connecting, coordinating Winterfest, programming, operations, and shared marketing. of the Winterfest event partners for the last 3 years. So the purpose behind Winterfest, much as many people on the PEDTalk today have mentioned, is to celebrate Hamilton communities and encourage participation from neighborhoods across the city, getting you out of your house during the winter, taking part in something you like doing or something you want to learn. The 2021 Winterfest events will take place January 29 to Family Day, February 15th. And due to the pandemic, many activities, of course, will be digital, virtual, online, but many are outdoors in our parks. There are self-guided tours, and some will be at indoor venues. So just some examples of creative, innovative things happening during Winterfest this winter. Local artist Tanis MacArthur is creating a series of inflatable icebergs that are filled with LED lights to bring you stunning colors of winter. Hamilton Aerial Group artists are part of this installation. To give you a sense of scale, the tallest iceberg is 20 feet high and it has a tunnel that you can walk through. So the icebergs are part of the rotation art installation that's going to be activated in 12 city parks. Incredible spaces to explore and take that once-in-a-lifetime selfie. We have a winter walking experience inspired by music and art of Hamilton. So this is an 11-unit installation that will be visiting business improvement areas, so BIAs, again, during Winterfest. Our public libraries are hosting dozens of online book readings, cooking classes, and lectures. And outdoors, our Hamilton Fringe Festival, Frostbites, will be doing a series of small audience theater shows throughout the city. So in addition to these, there's 40 other community events. So I urge everyone to visit Winterfest active. They have very active social media channels, and the website is hamiltonwinterfest.ca. In addition, in the new year, if you're a Hamilton resident, there's a Hamilton Winterfest magazine. There's 40,000 copies that are delivered by Canada Post across the city to apartments and homes. In addition, we have about 10,000 that are delivered to focus areas in Guelph and Brantford and the Niagara area. So if you're fortunate enough, you may be one of the homes that receives the magazine, and it's a complete overview of Winterfest programming. So just in the interest of time, I want to leave it there and encourage everyone to get out in February and enjoy some of the Winterfest programming.
Thank you, Dana and Pam. So this brings us to the end of our PEDTalk. I would like to thank our speakers today, Isla Tanaka and Sue Holdsworth. Thank you both for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today and share insights about Edmonton's world-class winter strategy. And also I'd like to thank Laura, Dana, and Pam for updating us on local initiatives happening this winter season. It sounds like I'll have a lot to choose from this winter, and I don't know what I'm going to pick first to take part in. And thank you everyone who participated. You've been a great audience today. Have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.